Hello, Hauppauge High School. This is Chris Cook, high school principal here. We are returning to our video series that we did in the spring that those of us who participated in it found very nourishing and supportive. It is our Wellness Wednesday lunch. However, we're just kind of reframing this conversation to be more of just an SEL generally oriented conversation. I have a wonderful crew of people here that will probably all likely come on and say hello in a minute and engage in conversations as we go. And we're very lucky today to be joined again by Mr. James Gallagher, who we've partnered with over the last couple of years around a variety of things, but really in the ongoing COVID situation, we've really valued our connection with him and are excited to kind of join him for a conversation today. Talk amongst a group of people that really care deeply about the success of Hauppauge High School and the success of our students and the emotional well-being of our students, and have a conversation that we're going to share with the community. So without further ado, Mr. Gallagher, come on in and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. As always, great to be with you all, Hauppauge High School leaders. So I'm very excited for this conversation. And that's all really what we'll do is just kind of move through a couple of questions to just kind of prime a conversation. I'll start with some structural questions. Borrowing Mr. Cook's phrase of this COVID thing has resulted in, I know, incredible amounts of work to meet students, families, and educators' needs. And now you all have been doing it closest to the work the last roughly 6 weeks or so. So this is just an opportunity to take a pause and just do some real-time reflection. So I'll start with kind of our learning model, the idea that some students are in person and some are distance. So open floor. What is working about that current learning model?
I mean, from what I'm hearing from students, people, whatever they chose, many of them feel like it's working for them. So the kids that are in the building feel very strongly that, that is a very positive thing for them. They're very motivated to be back amongst their peers, amongst their teachers, like in the consistency of the day-to-day in the building. And for kids who have chosen to be home, they're, a lot of them feel like that's been a very positive decision for them. To better monitor whatever it is that they felt like they needed to, and the reason that they stayed home.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is working well is just that structure. Last year, I know kids were kind of on their own to make their schedule themselves. And some were people were able to do it to different degrees, but I do think it was a challenge for everyone. So I think having the built-in structure for both the students who are here as well as our distance learners has worked well.
Thank you, Colleen.
I think our lunch periods, we've worked out some kinks and we're continuously thinking about how to make it better, just in terms of experience for the students and making sure that we're also then providing them with that opportunity to socialize. And it is challenging, but as I'm walking through the building and seeing, the students in their designated areas, it is working. They are so compliant, with the mask, and so compliant, with really a lot of things that we're asking them to do. And I think being back in the building gives them a sense of normalcy. And this may not look like, previous years, but it is our reality, for now. And I really feel that our students and our teachers and our parents at home have really risen to the challenge.
Beautiful. Thank you, Annie. Ms. Farrar.
So I look at these past 6 weeks as, triumphs in the challenge, finding those daily triumphs. The fact that students get up in the morning and put their feet on the floor and hit the go button and get to the building in spite of any types of adversities they may have. Staff coming in and pushing through, some of their own anxiety and nervousness for a host of reasons, but doing it each and every day. And I have to say, I am so super impressed on our B&C days that we can feed this entire building under an hour. I think that we forget these little triumphs, these little victories that really that really are huge. Comparatively speaking, where some districts do not have the opportunity to be open 5 days a week like we are. And I'm going to say, go team.
Thank you, Joy. A nice nod to kind of both what's been successful, what's been working, and even just feeding all students. So just really talking about the folks closest to this work, the food service team, and just really appreciating the gravity of how this structure impacts everyone. So before I transition, anything else in terms of what has been working about the model, or we've touched on some challenges? What challenges might we want to improve if we stay in this structure for the foreseeable future?
Well, I could add in one thing that, I know it was brought up as a challenge, but I do think in a lot of cases, the block model has been going well for teachers and students. It allows students more time to deeply engage in their work and with the content. And I know for certain content areas, the block model is actually more conducive for that. So in some cases, and in a lot of cases, actually, it's been going well. But one area to improve upon are the lengthy blocks that we currently have, where we do in some cases have groups of students in 2 blocks in a row in certain contents, and that's a long time. Ends up being about 2.5 hours in some cases. But that's really a structural thing that can be improved upon going forward if we are to continue with the block model.
Thank you.
So I was going to say, my concern moving forward is that this is how we have to continue to operate, and that we're never going to get back to the normal that we knew, and that the better we're getting, it's funny to say, but the better we're getting, the easier we're making it in allowing that to be, the new reality. And I think the kids generally want to be in school, but I think the kids that don't want to be in school, this makes it, our school avoiding kids that we would have focused on, this makes it somewhat easier for them. I also think about the scheduling part that was mentioned early. I know teachers are working a lot to kind of adapt their plans to the block schedule, but I'm hoping that with this model where the kids are logging on at the same time and it's synchronous, that is relieving them of some of what they were experienced in the spring, which is essentially, we experienced it too. There's never an off. There's never a weekend. There was never, you leave at 3:00 and you get home and you can spend the time with your family. It was constantly, ding, 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 ding for their kids that like to work at 11 o'clock at night. So I'm hoping that this has made that easier on the teachers in that aspect.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. I appreciate what everybody's offered here. The Lakers just beat Miami Heat, and there's a story about the Heat culture, why it's relevant at all. Is Pat Riley is really well known for this phrase, "Keep the main thing the main thing." And if our main thing is supporting students to grow in a lot of different ways, like that's the main thing, and to do so safely. So, I think on the whole, we've kept the main thing, which is support our students, give them as much curricular opportunity as possible, do it as safely as we can, and try to do it every single day. Like our main thing is to educate students. And I think we're doing a really solid job of making sure that stays the main thing, all the while doing as safely as possible. So on the whole, I've been really impressed. And some of the things that come up, they're about the main thing a little bit, but they're not necessarily the core main thing that we're having to solve on the periphery for to actually make the main thing better. But a lot of it is just kind of making sure that we keep that hyper focus on what is the core of our job. So.
Thank you, Chris. So I think that's a nice segue, keeping the main thing. So we've shared a bit around the current structure, the learning model. I'd like to turn our conversation to the impact of that learning model on the social emotional experience of all stakeholders. but let's start with students. Is there anything, and I understand this would be anecdotal, what are you observing, either bright spots or concerns, about students' social emotional condition, given this new dynamic and all that we're navigating? What are you observing, either bright spots or possible concerns that we want to lift up?
I guess I could jump in on that because it kind of relates back to what I said. I think the bright spots are, in general, the kids that are social are finding ways to still continue to be social, but the kids that are not social are kind of still being not social and not being forced to kind of socialize because they are able to stay home and in some cases, hide behind the screen. So I think that divide is something that I'm concerned about, especially if we're talking about supporting students at home. How are we doing that emotional support from home?
So a couple of years ago, we started talking about how to, build connections with our students, and we thought about, different ways in mentorship or just, anyone in the building can make that connection. And how we talked about how research has shown that one connection could, mean so many different things and could improve upon their lives, so significantly. I am just concerned because I'm trying to see where we can make that connection, with the students, right? And so we no longer have our after school, clubs. We can't say, hey, if you are interested in meeting, someone who has like the same, artistic abilities as you, or interested in that, particular area, join this club or speak to this particular teacher because, they're running, they're a mentor for, this particular, club. So like that, this is the space, and trying to find pockets of time, place to make those connections has been, I feel, 6 weeks in is challenging, for us.
I would agree. So just piggybacking on what Annie was saying, I think from feedback that I've gotten from students, that are here, at least on site, they are happy to be immersed back with their peers and having that social interaction. But many of the kids that I've spoken to have talked about the after school isolation and how that's still really like a significant challenge for many of them. And, understanding the limitations, but really concerned about, not being able to find just very safe ways for them to still be interacting with their peers. And then I think what's been like a bright spot to me has been how resilient so many kids have been in finding their little niche, and and recognizing that they do have little groups of friends that they have been relying on, and they really have been kind of walking through this process with, which I think is really phenomenal, that they have found the ability to recognize that, even if you have a couple really good friends that you can communicate with, you need to utilize them maybe a little bit more than they would have recognized the need to do in the past.
Thank you. Anyone else, before I slightly reframe the question? Anything you've been observing around student social emotional experience, either a bright spot or a concern? Please, Ms. Farrar.
So, I have a concern about many of our students who are on distance learning. Some of these students, suffer from anxiety or depression, or have self-isolated even when we were in session. So I have, a concern about these students, and the school has always been the safe haven and providing safety nets for students. And, so having those kinds of live touches, or being able to check in on a student if they were in the building, certainly presents challenges, and being able to check in virtually during the school day isn't always possible because the student is in class. So I do have a concern about our students who are on distance learning being able to still, feel that connection, feel that support that we've always been able to give them when we were here. So I think that's my biggest concern right now.
So we've kind of turned to not only students' relationships with each other, students now relationship with adults that used to obviously be more accessible being in person. Given where we are in the conversation, is there tools or resources that come to mind that we could be doing to support students that maybe we're not currently doing, and some ideas that may have been percolating? What tools, resources would best support students right now? Please, Colleen.
Okay, very easy for me to say because I wouldn't have to deal with the logistical nightmare. But I do think, I know Shannon has brought this up before, if there can be some flexibility in terms of working some of our distance learners to help them transition back into the building. I know Joy is doing this, trying to do this as well. Maybe the idea of coming back full day is pretty overwhelming. And so I know it's very, very, very challenging, and I can't even imagine the challenges of having a student come back for maybe one block for a period of time and remain on distance learning for the rest. And then, the following week have 2 blocks. But I do think the all or nothing kind of model poses a challenge and an intimidation to some of our students' ability to be willing to take that risk to come back.
Yeah, and I think what I want to jump in quickly here is this group, we have such a lens on students who are struggling. And a lot of our work is to always be thinking about students who are maybe struggling for one reason or another, whether it's academically, socially, emotionally, and make sure that there's support structures to support those students. I think it's worth noting, though, that many students and their families who've chosen to stay home, have done so just under one very specific reason, which is they don't want to get COVID, or they don't want their families to get COVID, or they don't want their grandparents to get COVID. And many of those students, though that is a challenge, right? That's a challenge for anybody in the world today. They're thriving academically. And so I think it's important to kind of think about the 200 plus students at home through kind of that same multi-lens approach, which is kind of thinking, how are kids doing academically? How are they doing socially? How are they doing emotionally? And in truth, our students at home, just like our students in the building, are kind of all over the map on that question. And so what's challenging for us is now we're creating support structures in place for a group of students in person that has a very different playbook for students at home. And in truth, I think we're still trying to figure out our playbook. And this group gets together once a week to kind of think through that playbook for students who are at home. And it's hard to know exactly how people are doing at home, other than what we're seeing on Google Meets and things like that. So the playbook is being developed, to say the least.
Indeed. So every cliche imaginable, there's no instruction manual, there's no playbook for navigating this. Mr. Feeney, I appreciate you identifying their unique complexities coming from home, possibly back into in-person, and they're different for potentially in-person to go home. And that sounds like a question that we are all in, of how can the structure potentially evolve? And our conversation here is an opportunity to identify some of those pieces. You gracefully said, oh, easy for me to say, I wouldn't have to navigate the logistical challenge. So let's do that. Let's turn our lens towards the adults in the building and essentially ask the same question. Again, anecdotally, what are you observing, either bright spots, ways people are engaging differently, or challenges or concerns around adult social emotional behavior in the building, or social emotional conditions? What are we noticing about our peers, our friends? Please, Ms. Griffin.
So, I think the level of, I feel like the weight that the teachers are putting on their shoulders has been massive. I think that they carry a lot of belief that this is going to work or not work based on, what they're doing. And it's just a lot. I will say, both as a parent and as like an educator in the building, I do think that their social and emotional needs have become massive because there is so much pressure and stress on them to be meeting all of those needs, trying to meet the academic, social, emotional pieces to every kid that walks through their room, and navigating that. And I just think that they're, I definitely, I feel for them. And I think that they are under a tremendous amount of pressure, even more so than they have ever been before.
No doubt. Thank you. Ms. Wong.
So I think we've been talking about since, the spring, right? So we have to mitigate our expectations, right, of what the school year is to look like. We should not expect that it's going to look exactly like previous years. But I think our teachers, they're such professionals, right? They want things, right? They want the results to be the same. They want our kids to learn all the information that has been taught, many years. But this year is different. And I don't think that our teachers give themselves a little bit of latitude, right? To say, you know what, this is okay too. If I maybe miss this particular lesson, it's okay. So I think it's difficult to say to a teacher, oh, it's fine. Everything's going to be fine, because in their mind, it's not, right? And as a perfectionist myself, I know all those buzzwords. I know that I need to give myself, some grace, right? But it's extremely difficult for me to actually put that in practice. So I'm wondering, with the resources that we can provide to, my colleagues, whether or not there's a way for them to, navigate that, on their own terms. But the giving yourself grace is something that I think we have to continuously remind ourselves, because this is not, what it has been.
Thank you. Ms. Farrar, please.
So I had a conversation last week with a trusted colleague, and I described to this individual that I compared my brain to my grandmother's attic. So if you can imagine a very old attic with steamer trunks and the dress forms and Christmas decorations and all of this stuff. And then if you go through the attic, there's probably these very large cobwebs, right? So all of these things are going on here. And I'm imagining that out of the 200 adults in this building, each of us has their own grandma's attic going on for one reason or another, because it's not just the school stuff. It's also the home stuff. And, my worry coming into the building, navigating the day, and then going home is very different than maybe Joe's worry or Annie's worry, right? So we each are carrying these sets of worries as well. And I think the adults in this building worry they're not going to get it right. And Chris shared something with us at Health and Counseling a couple of weeks ago about, maybe our expectation this year is here. We all know that we're at this level when we're at the top of the game, but it's this whole gap that, Chris, I'm going back to, this is where people get stuck, in this gap of, well, I know I should be here, but I'm not able because of this stuff going on in my head and these new mandates that are coming back to us on a daily basis, either from state ed or from the CDC. So people, I find, are getting stuck on like this quagmire here, you know, of whatever the worry is, that I can't get to that high level of excellence that I'm constantly used to. So being able to forgive ourselves for not being able to do that, I think, is necessary. Recognizing that self-care is essential, but getting to a place where we give our permission to do ourselves permission to do that. So that's where I'm coming from today.
Yeah, and if I could just speak to that for like a very quick moment. I've been so impressed, and this is my third year here. The standard that our team has is a very high standard, and it had only been ticking up as a standard in the last couple of years. And it's important to recognize that our plan this year is really designed to help us maintain a really good standard. And comparatively, like, I don't know, and I don't mean to be competitive in the space of supporting children in the country. That's not like, I would love for every kid in the world to get a great education. But we run a Hauppauge High School, and we're as a team, our work is to support Hauppauge students. And, you know, at the end of today, we will have completed our 27th school day. Our students have 100% of their programming. They can do it in a manner that is comfortable to them and their families, whether it's in person or at home. Our teachers have the space and time in the 70-minute block to cover a lot of content, but also to do it in a way that doesn't feel so rushed. So there's a lot of things that, even if we're going a little bit of a speed lower than we're used to, it's all been intentionally to kind of scale it back that way. And if we continue to do what we're doing, there's no way other students are getting a better experience than what we've been able to provide here, because we're just covering so much more. I mean, there's, you know, if you think about the students who go to school in the city, and my heart goes out to the entire city schools, where it's just like, what is the plan? The plan is still evolving. It's October 13th, and we've been going for this is our 27th school day. So, you know, when you think about kids in other states and in other districts, and it's just what's happening here, even if it's 85% of what we're used to doing, is still way ahead in terms of providing a good opportunity for our students. And that's a hard concept for us to kind of get our heads wrapped around, but I do believe it's working incredibly well.
Please, Ms. Ruffini.
And Chris, I think you help with that a lot. When we came in, it wasn't a let's hit the ground running type of thing. From day one, you were like slow. I think you set the pace where it was all about all of us getting used to all these changes and having that opportunity to really kind of wrap our heads around it. And just, you slowed everybody down. And it was like a community deep breath that we all took, because it was all just about, okay, let's just take it slow. Let's take it one step at a time. You broke it down and made it much more manageable with the pace that you set. And I think that was a big part of the success that we're seeing.
Cool. Well, thanks for that nod. But in truth, like, we got a good thing going here, and it's you know, Joy mentioned there's almost 250 adults that walk into this building on a daily basis, and it's awesome to just see everybody's maybe slow going along, but we're all going along, and it's just awesome to watch. It really is.
I just wanted to echo kind of what Colleen was saying. I think Chris constantly saying, take it slow, is helpful. And I hope some of the teachers start to kind of embrace that, because I don't think many of them do. I think they still feel that rush, that never ending anxiety. And as they look around at all these schools that are closing or, you know, have outbreaks, that anxiety is almost now raising, because it's not like, all right, we're going to be out for the next 2 weeks. It's, are we going to be here tomorrow? Or are we going to be here in January? Are there going to be Regents exams? Like, there's just still so much, there's still so much you can worry about. So if the more we can get our teachers to just be fully present and concentrate on what's going positive right now, like, we can't control the future. If you ask Chris when we had the conversation that Monday morning we left, he was like, what day do you think we're going to close? And I was like, what? Like, I was just so confused. And now it's like every day teachers are probably like, do I bring home all my stuff because I might not be back in the building tomorrow? You know, Annie can't even, Annie walks around with her pocketbook because she won't commit to anything. So I think sharing these meetings, I wish more teachers could really take the time or have the time to participate, because for me, it's super helpful to just take a half an hour to discuss my stresses with my colleagues, and they're not going to go away. They're going to be the same stresses I have, but just to kind of identify them and then move them out of my head and do the next thing that we have to do on the checklist. So I really appreciate having this time together.
So Ms. Pagliari kind of took us there. So similar to the question around what resources, tools could we offer students? I want to try and combine two questions into one. Are there any innovative practices happening organically for teachers right now or adults in the building that we want to highlight? So that's one part of the question. And is there other things we should be considering to support and provide resources to adults in the building?
Yeah, I've been sitting back, and I know Joe's been sitting back too, so I'd ask maybe him to chime in next. But what I'm seeing from best practices is it is wild to walk across this building and see people just trying all sorts of different things. So you can walk by a class and see, you know, if there's a class of 25, you might see 8 up on the board. Some teachers have had a second smart board going with the materials. I've seen discussions where literally kids on the board are talking to kids in the classroom. It's just wild stuff we're seeing. And then people are using, you know, the breaks and the walks to move forward instruction or to help do some of the mindfulness practices that we've been trying to think through how to ingrain. So I could point to a ton of different ones. I always feel kind of weird in these videos that are going to go out into the world and naming a specific individual. But really, there's so many teachers right now who are knocking it out of the park, and also doing so knowing that they don't have the full answer, which I think is the best kind of experimentation, which is like, I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to tweak it again, and I'm going to work on it, and oh, that's good for this type of lesson, but not for this type of lesson. It's been really cool to see.
Yeah, Chris, I'll add on. You know, part of I've seen teachers. You know, they've been running their classes on the football field, in the stands. You know, actually using breaks to not just move forward content, but to connect with their students. And so that's been the biggest thing. Is there's been time I've seen teachers trying to connect with kids in ways that, you know, really hasn't been seen before. And so, to that end, I do think that one of the things that would benefit staff and students most, really with staff with development this year, is, you know, just everyone needs help in learning how to help kids deal with the stresses socially and emotionally. You know, kids now more than ever are coming in every day with you know, issues that are just compounding because of the last few months. And I think everyone just needs help in being able to support students, to move forward, how to deal with those in the best ways possible. But, you know, I can't read off all the examples that I've seen with staff trying to do those things. You know, I've gone into classes where the first few minutes is just teachers being mindful with the kids to center themselves. So there's been a lot of those mindful minutes and those kind of things to get students centered and ready. I've seen kids doing it themselves. They know when they need to take breaks. I've, you know, seen them talk to their teachers about asking to take a break. It's just been really inspiring to see. But, you know, there's never enough, or I should say there's never too much work that we can do with staff and with students on how to regulate our social emotional learning. So, but we've seen a ton of it.
Thank you. Ms. Hong.
Another thing that I've been seeing is just walking around the building during our lunch periods and our affinity lunch groups. And so grateful for the teachers who've stepped up and taken on, groups of, students. And, there's laughter in the classrooms. And we haven't heard that in a really long time, I think. There's conversations that are going on. There are, fun things happening, when teachers like playing music and just great conversations that, I've been overhearing. So I think we could do a lot during that BC block or the AD block, whenever, our kids are kind of gathered together to do maybe some of this SEL work, infuse some of this stuff for both the students and also for our staff.
Yeah, a reminder to us all, myself included, we've been in learning around our own practices. So just a reminder, take care of ourselves, yourself this afternoon and always.
Excellent. All right, guys. Peace out. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thank you, Gene.
Later, Hop Hog.
Bye. Thanks, James.